Aloha, this is Doug from Big Island Campers. Today, I'm going to be redoing this door, or covering this door, finishing this door. And this video that I'm doing today is going to be for the people that have never built a camper van before, haven't done much construction before, and are like, okay, how do I get this to look like this? Okay, so I'm going to go through today kind of the whole process. I'm going to talk about insulation. I'm going to talk about backing. I'm going to talk about what kind of screws to use. I'm going to talk about practicing how to put screws in the metal, because some people have never done it before. You've never had a screw gun in your hand before, and that's exactly why I make these videos. So come along, I'm going to go through the whole thing, and if you know how to do this, then you'll be able to do the rest of this. It's all the same, except, you know, now is the time you want to think, okay, what do I want to put in here? Do I want to put some lighting in here? Well, if you want to put lighting in, now is the time to do it. And actually, for me, it's beyond the time to do it, because all this is done. And unless I ran a wire to here to put a light in, it's kind of too late. So those kind of things. Okay, I'm going to talk to you about my thought process in the build, and then while I start building things, I'm just going to put this on hyperlapse or whatever, and put some funky music on so you guys can see what I'm doing. But I want to talk to you about the things that you need to think about before you start putting anything on the walls of your van, or, you know, finishing this door. So the first thing is, do I want this window to be a window, or do I want it boarded up? If I want it to be a window that we can look out, then you're gonna have to think about, how am I gonna frame it out? And so here's the frame on this one. You know, I did it with Monkey Pod, but you've got to frame it out some way with some type of wood, and it takes a lot of time and planning. So that's one way. Or you can just cover them up, which is what I do. I don't like to have windows by my bed. I like it dark, unless I'm sleeping under the stars. So what do you put on the glass? So all my vans, before I put, you know, insulation on and cover up the windows, I spray paint them with black paint. And then on the outside, you know, they look like that. You can't tell. They were tinted to begin with, but this one has a dive flag in it. That was it was in the van when I bought it, because this window was broken, and so I replaced the window. But I like the dive flag because it kind of makes it look local, and it is. It's the local van. This is gonna be my van, but I will rent it out. So the other thing I was talking about is lights. Thank God I don't want to put any lights in the door, because one, I didn't wire for it, I didn't plan for it, and none of my other vans have lights in the doors, so this one's not either. Okay, insulation. This insulation was in here. This is you know, just a fiberglass insulation. It's fine. It's just taking up space to prevent airflow off of this metal, which is going to be hot, into, you know, the rest of the cab. So I'm going to take rock wool. I've got rock wool, and I'm going to stuff this full of rock wool. I'm also going to stuff this full of rock wool. And this is a backer board, because I want to be able to put, you know, hooks up here for towels or wetsuits, things like that. And then I'm going to put a piece of plywood, like a 1/2 inch plywood, over the whole thing, and I'm going to screw it on. We'll talk about that in a second. But after that, then I'll put the tongue and groove on. And this tongue and groove, there's the 1/2 inch plywood that just bends and kind of fills in some of the deep curvature in the door, and, you know, gives me something more solid to put the tongue and groove on. That's only 1/4 inch tongue and groove, and so it can crack, and so I wanted some backing. Plus, if I want to put screws in wherever, like this thing, I've moved this thing now like 3 times, even though I've mounted 6 of these. I've still had to move it 3 times because, you know, I realized once I put the bed in, oh, when I close it, the bed hits this. So I had to raise it up and move it over and put it in front of the speaker. So, and then this I had to move over because it was getting caught in the door. So, you know, the other thing as far as screws on here, I could have taken and did hidden staples, and then it would look all like nice and finished, right? But I need to have access. If I do that, I won't have access to this door. And there's things inside these doors, like your latches. Ford on their E350s, if anybody has one, they know that these cables that go down to the actuator that opens and closes the door, they had a black piece of plastic on there. It was brittle and it just fell apart, and every once in a while your door stops working, so you have to replace it with an aluminum one. So I've replaced some of these with aluminum ones. The rest of them I can kind of get to, but regardless, I still want to access inside this door if I have to, so that's why I'm using screws to take this all apart. I like to use a fine thread, and this is not the finest thread drywall screw, but if you use a fine thread drywall screw, that works best in metal. You can use a metal tapping, you know, self-tapping metal screw. You can use that. It's like, it's got a tip on it like that. That's the tip you want. That's a self-tapping, and it's a fine thread, and it has a nice wide, you know, head on it with like a little washer on it. So those are nice. I don't have a whole lot of those, so I'm going to go with what I got. I also like these deck screws. They have a nice, right there you can kind of see the slot. That is also a self-tapping mechanism. But the thing I like about these is they're star-based. And these just grip so well. If you've ever, you know, done a Phillips head screw like that, you know that they chatter a lot. They get reamed out, and then your screw's in there and you can't get it out, and it's a pain in the ass. These star bits are phenomenal. I love them. I use them as much as I can. And these are deck screws, so, you know, they'll last. They're very strong. And you can get them in, you know, 1.25 inch, 2 inch, 2.5, 3 inch. So I use them for pretty much building everything with wood, but they also go really good into metal. So This metal on the door, it doesn't go to the outside. You'll see there's some areas where it's a double wall thickness. That makes a difference when you're going into metal. Sometimes you put 5 screws in and they all go in super easy, and then you get another one and you're like, what's going on? Well, you probably hit a section that's a double wall. So, but use this as an area to practice. You can put 50 holes in this and it's not going to make any difference. So let's use this self-tapping one first, and we'll move it over there. Whoops, see, there I go, and push it straight. Even I still do it. Okay, so I'm gonna hold that on there, and it's gonna start. Now I'm in. Okay, so the other important thing is when you're I didn't have anything behind it. So anyway, it's screwed in. So these that's the self-tapping metal screw. That's a fine thread. This is a drywall screw. So, and notice I start out slow, and then once you start seeing metal going in, and then you'll feel it just starts to give like butter. So that's your drywall screw, and that one's has a little bit narrower shank than this. I think this is a size 6. So when you look at screws, it'll say this is what you want. So in this one, this is a size 6, a pound 6. They got pound 8, pound 10, and that's the thickness of the shank of the screw. Okay, so that's what the number 6 means, and that's important because you want a number 6. You'll see how much easier this number 6 went in versus the number 8. This is a number 8. Very similar pitch on the thread. This one's actually a little bit less aggressive pitch, and so typically they don't go in as well. They're a little harder to get started. You need a little more force, but they eventually do go, and that one's going to be in there too. I'll take that out like that. Get used to, if you haven't done this, try to put 5 screws in without screwing it up, or doing, just try to get 5 screws in, and just use this as not, you're not going to hurt any of this. You can put as many holes in this thing as you want. So use this as something to practice on. Then when you put a board up there and you're going through the board, it's actually easier because the screw is already cut threads into the wood, and so that keeps your screw going nice and straight, and you can develop a little bit of speed, and you'll find too fast doesn't go in, too slow it takes a while. There's a certain right speed that it just goes in like butter. So okay, what I'm doing here is I got a piece of plywood that I'm going to put on here, and I'm making a template, or I'm holding it up there to scribe it so I can cut it out. But what I'm doing with these clamps is, you can see the door kind of bows in like this, and so your plywood's going to want to be way out here. Well, we want it against the frame. So what I'm doing is I'm using clamps to kind of slowly pull it in, and eventually some of it will break a little bit, but it's okay. We're going to cover it with tongue and groove anyway. It's just a backing board, and it's plywood, so it'll be okay. But I'm bringing it in slowly, so you can see I'm squeezing these and slowly bringing it. And then once I'll mark this just like this with a magic marker, and then I'm going to go cut that, and I'll do this all the way around. And the reason why it's important to mark that, pull this in first, and mark it is because when you pull it in, it's going to pull this wood down. So you want to try to get it as accurate as possible so you don't have to mess with it once it's up there. So okay, so I've got the pattern drawn out. I've marked the top inside so I know which direction this thing goes on. And now the question is, what saw are we going to use to cut this out? So most of you guys are going to probably go to your jigsaw, and I'm going to use a circle saw, and I'll tell you why. You can also use a multi-tool, but that's going to take forever. I don't use a jigsaw all that often, tiny little things, but most often now I use the multi-tool. And by the end, after we're all done cutting this, I'm going to use a side grinder to sand most of it anyway. But here's our end product. It's going to look like this, okay? And so I'm going to have to sand that anyway. You can see my sander kind of hit there. You know, I want to shape it to that. And then I'm going to coat over this with a rubber paint all the way around because it's on the outside and I don't want water coming. You know, this is going to be open. It's just going to be open when it's raining. Someone's going to have it open, or I'm going to have it open, and I'm going to be out underwater fishing. So water's going to run down. So I'm going to cover it with this rubberized paint. And you can see I use this rubberized paint all along the rain gutters because those notoriously leak. And when I'm all done building this van out, I'm going to do a Rhino coat over the entire van anyway. So all this patchwork that you're seeing is all going to get covered up anyway. You know, a skill saw or jigsaw will work perfectly fine. It's just going to take way longer, and it doesn't have to be that accurate. So that's why I'm doing the circle saw. I've been asked many times where I've learned these skills on how to use these tools and so forth. I'm the youngest of 12 kids. I have 8 older brothers and 3 older sisters. All my brothers built their own houses. So from the time I was a little kid, I was working with them as a laborer. Okay, so now that this is closely related to the size of the door, I went and did a final check, and I'm gonna, you know, I'm gonna cut a little bit more off. It's kind of hard when you have a huge piece of plywood up there to really know exactly what you want for your finished product. So so I just kind of scribed that line on, just holding with my finger, you know, and just went down. So and some of it I just freehand. So I'm going to cut this, and then, you know, you got to have your spaces for where it latches in the door. But also this has a speaker in it, and I'm going to show you how to cut out the hole for that speaker, and hopefully we get it right. So, all right. But I think there's some birds over here that want to be fed. So I got to go feed the birds. You waiting for some food? Okay, here we go. Here comes their little family and all the doves. Do this a couple times a day. All right, back to work. Okay, I wet the inside of this board with some water just to soften it up a little bit, because when I was trying to bend it to the door, it just sounds really dry. And it's, you know, it's 85 degrees here, and it'll dry soon enough. So anyway, we're gonna measure out this speaker here and cut the hole in there. And I like to have my pattern real close by and in the same orientation that the door is. I don't want to try to figure it out backwards. So forwards is hard enough. So, but we can make it simple. We're gonna measure to the very edge of that speaker, and I know that it's it's 6 3/4 inches to the metal there, and that's going to be about where the plywood is. It might be in a little bit, so I'm going to make the hole a little bit more generous because I'm going to cover it with tongue and groove anyway. So let's measure in 6 3/4 of an inch and put a mark right there. Okay. And I'm roughly guesstimating the distance. So now let's measure the distance. And to the bottom of that is pretty much right at 16 inches. So we'll do 16. And then to the top is 21 3/4. So 16 and 21 3/4. So let's do both of those. So here's 21 3/4. Mark that. Where did my pen go? There, and 16. So right there, that should be that. And then let's check also this dimension. Okay, to that side, we're at 14 3/4. So let's go 14 3/4. Okay, so I know that within these boundaries is that speaker, and I'll draw that out in a second. Another thing we can do is I could take this off and I could use this as a template and line it all up if I wanted to get really anal about it, but I'm not going to get that anal about it. So anyway, I'll show you how I square this up and cut it out. Okay, I just took, there's my pattern. I'm gonna cut that out. That's close enough to that. And all I did is draw a box around this thing, you know, just measured out a box. And then I went from this point, which is the center point, to that center point. And I just found something that was relatively round. It just happens that this sanding disc is pretty close to round, you know, to matching that. This is not round, this is, you know, oval, but good enough. So that's what I use for my pattern, and I'm going to cut that out. Now that probably is best to use a jigsaw on. Okay, there's different blades that you can get for your jigsaw. They generally will say on them or the package. This is more of a wood blade. It's got larger teeth, larger offset. You can see I burnt the heck out of it. You don't want to burn your blades because it dulls them. And then this is a finer tooth. This is for sheet metal. Like if you want to put a hole in your roof to put your vent fan in, you'd use a sheet metal one. So anyway, I'm going to show you here how, if you're in the middle of a board, to get your jigsaw through the board since you're not starting on the edge. You can drill a hole, but that means I gotta go get my drill, get a drill bit, put it together, and drill a hole, and then stick the thing through. So here's another alternative way to do it. So you're gonna put your jigsaw like this, and you're just gonna slowly like that, and then away you go. This is rock wool. It's got a very good sound deadening, and it doesn't maintain moisture as much as this does. Some people like to put, styrofoam in there. Well, try to fit a bunch of styrofoam in there, and honestly, I don't think that it does as good of a job insulating as the rock wool or fiberglass insulation. And when you're driving down the road, and your vehicle's twisting and bending, and this is an off-road vehicle, so it's going to start squeaking. So it kind of gets to be a pain in the ass. I've done it on some of my vans. The best thing I've found is the rock wool. It's cheaper. Anyway, I'm going to stuff it in here, and then we'll put the panel on and screw it on. The thing I wanted to say about insulation is you don't want to pack it in super tight. You want it kind of fluffy. You just want it something to take up the airspace between here and here, and kind of create a little bit of a difficulty for air to go from one side, temperature going from one side to the other side. So that's all you're really doing is trapping the air so the air doesn't move in it. So that's the whole purpose of the insulation. Some places you have heating and cooling and different, if you're in Wisconsin or Canada or something like that, then you have to talk about vapor barriers, and I'm not going to get into that. I'm in Hawaii. I don't have to deal with it. I don't need to think about it. So. Okay, well, that wasn't so bad, and this turned out well. I had that 2x4 in here, so I put some longer screws in there to kind of pull that in, and I marked on the end here with a magic marker before I bolted this or batten that up. I don't know if you can see that there, but I just have a black magic marker just indicating where that stud is that goes across the window, and so that's a nice anchor. All this I can put hooks on. I can do anything. I'm gonna trim this a little bit here with the multi-tool, but other than that, it looks good. I'm gonna close put the bed in, close the door, make sure all the latches hit and everything. Sometimes, if it's too low, like here, this is gonna hit for sure. So I need to, hit that with the multi-tool a little bit, maybe hit it with the sander, just tie up those little loose ends. But sometimes, you've got to, put it on, mark it, cut it, put it back on, take it off, put it back on, take it off. I do it all the time. That's just the way building camper vans is. So if you're finding that you're doing that, don't be frustrated. It's just part of the process. And if this was easy, everybody would be doing it. So, but these screws, let me just give you an example of putting these screws in now. Once you have the plywood on there, they actually go quite easily. And let's see if I can do this with one hand. Okay, so just so you can see here, and check to make sure you don't want to stick your screw in so it comes out, the back of here. You want it inside the thing. So get in a little bit. So let's just stick one here. Okay, done. Simple. Okay, and it's not poking out the other side. So those are the deck screws, the T25s. They work great. They're fantastic. I love them. Anywhere I can use them, I use them. So, okay, on to the next thing. I'm gonna trim this up. I'm not gonna bore you with that. And then we'll start putting cedar on. after I check to make sure that the door closes and everything fine. And then we're gonna have to make a handle for it, so that'll be kind of fun. All right. All right, you saw I used the circle saw to just cut this edge a little bit more, a little bit back, just because when I close the door, whoops, when I close the door, this is the molding, and then I'm gonna have it was right up against that, so I wanted it back a little bit, and so I'm gonna put the tongue and groove there. It's gonna be a little thicker, so it's gonna come flush with this. So I needed to you know, trim a little bit off, and there's a lot of fine trimming like that. I set my circle saw to a shallow depth so I wouldn't hit the metal, and then I used the multi-tool to just finish up the last part of it, because I don't want to dull the blade of the circle saw. So anyway, when you feel really comfortable using a circle saw, you can do things like that. But if you're just learning and you're starting out, I would not attempt that. But, well, the worst thing you're gonna do is you're gonna fuck up your blade. So, okay, on to the next thing. We're gonna put the cedar tongue and groove on now. Okay, so what I did, I just measured from the top to the bottom, both sides, make sure it was pretty much level off of that, so that once you put all of your boards up, that you end up pretty level at the top. You're gonna trim off. It's never perfectly straight. There's nothing square on vans. And then I just marked the bottom. So I'm gonna start on the bottom, and then on these, because this wood is so thin, I'm gonna actually drill a little countersink hole, because if I put a screw right through here, it will split it. So all these are gonna have to be pre-drilled. So we'll do that one, and then we'll measure the next one and do the door. Not only did I grow up building houses with my brothers, but I also had industrial arts classes in middle school and high school, where we had phenomenal teachers and great shops. We had woodworking shops and metal working shops and electrical classes, all types of different trades that I learned. And okay, so you saw how we got the whole door together. You saw how I had to take a couple pieces off, replace them. This cedar is very thin and very brittle. It's extremely dry, and when I put a screw in it, sometimes it would crack, and then it needs to conform to this to the curve of the door. And when I did that, a couple places cracked. I put a couple staples in there just to hold it down, and then I put some wood filler in it. This is a Durham's water whatever. Anyway, this is really good wood putty. You mix it up with water, it dries up very hard, and I'm just so I put it on, and then as it's drying, I take a little wet towel, and I just kind of rub it off a little bit, and it gets all the excess off, and I can let that dry then, and I'll hit it with the sander. But if you take a little wet towel, you can really smooth it out and get it in those cracks, and then I also filled it here. And again, I'm gonna paint this with a rubberized paint all the way around, and you can see I'm gonna sand a little bit of that. But I may put some caulk in there, and then that's going to get rubber paint over it, because this is going to be open, it's going to rain, and I want to prevent water from running down inside between the metal and the wood. And so just try to prevent that as much as possible. So and then I'm gonna put tongue oil on it. So you'll see me do that next, and we'll be done. And then I'm gonna make a handle for it, a handle for this side and a handle for that side. So when you're on the inside and you want to close the door, you got a handle to pull on. And so that's gonna be a little fun project. So anyway, also I put this, you can see how I had the little piece of mesh, whatever it's called, yeah, that mesh. And I painted it black, and so that kind of hides the speaker a little bit, makes it look a little softer. This could round out a little bit better, but anyway, I'm gonna keep going with the tongue and groove. I'll show you what it looks like after this stuff dries and I sand it and put tongue oil on it. Okay, we just got it done. So here it is. One thing that I would have done a little different is, you can see from the end here it's nice and flat, and I don't know if you can see that or not, but it kind of bows out here a little bit. And when I did the window and I put that 2x4 backer in there, I should have put another one lower. Normally I have one right in the center, but I wanted to have that backer up higher so I could put stronger hooks in for like BCDs, heavy, wetsuits and things like that. So that's why I moved it up. I should have put one in here, and it would have prevented this cracking that took place. But I filled this with wood filler. That's going to get rubber paint. I did put a couple staples in there, but anyway, this door is done. I am going to make some handles. I'm going to make some handles out of this. This is a piece of monkey pod that was left over from the windows. And so I'm going to do those on a different video. But I hope this helps. If you can do that, you can do the rest of your van, and it's not difficult to do. It just takes time. You make mistakes. You got to take things apart, put them back together, and even after several vans, I think I've done a half a dozen of them. I still take things apart, put them back together, fix little things, whatever. Change my mind. Designs change. So I hope this video was helpful to a lot of people, and leave some comments in the comments section. Tell me what you think. There's a number of ways to build these. This is how I do it, and it's not a piano, it's a camper van, and it's not a piece of fine furniture, and it's gonna get bumped up, it's gonna get banged up, and so you just want to build it so that if something breaks, you can repair it, things like that. So all right, there you have it. Hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you on the next video. Watch for the next video of how I do the door handles. So okay, aloha.